Let's keep it going. Our next presenter, these are her words. She is an escapee from Gary, Indiana. She escaped to pursue life as an artist. She's an actor, a writer, a comedian. She's worked with the Black Ensemble Theatre, the Court Theatre, Second City's ETC, and she is staffed as a writer for Cards Against Humanity. And she's nicknamed her daughter Michelle Obama. Here is Lisa Beasley.
Hey everybody, I don't really know what's about to happen up here, so we'll see. So basically, white people have done a pretty good job of molding their existence in media. We get it, you're here. And in the 90s, I remember watching a lot of black television. You had Hanging with Mr. Cooper, The Cosby Show, A Different World, Living Single, Moesha, like a lot of shows, and then all of a sudden they all went away. And that's why a book about 4 little white girls changed my life. Yeah. So every summer my mom made my brother, my sister, and I read books, but she didn't have to make me read books because I like to. So one day she bought me Little Women, but it wasn't the full one, it was the kiddie kind, where Beth doesn't die. So I instantly knew at 9 that the kiddie book was bullshit, and I found the real one. And I read it, and it's just like, about 4 little basic white girls. And them troping through life and having adventures and going on to write stories that make it into the newspaper, and they fall in love, and then their sister falls in love with the same guy, and Beth gets sick and has complications from scarlet fever and dies, and that's a tragedy. And I also thought it was pretty cool that there was a story where a little white girl died, and but it was still like a children's book, which was crazy to me, and I didn't understand why they cut that out in the children's version. So I have a daughter now, and I bought her a Little Women book, but I forgot that they made the version with Beth not dying. And so when I was reading it to her and it skipped that part, I said, "This is some bullshit. You're gonna read the real one." She's 10 months, if that makes anything better. But what's crazy to me is my childhood was fairly normal. I grew up in Gary, Indiana. I know you vacationed there. And I grew up around all black people. I went to high school with all black people. I went to an HBCU. It's a college with all black people. And then I made the decision to go to acting school when I was 22 in Los Angeles. And I was like, finally, I get to hang out with white people. And I was like, I'm gonna meet the Joes, Beth, Megs, and Amy's that I read about. And white girls are so exciting, and they have adventures, and they live these lives. And then I was like, whoa, shit. All they want me to do is explain my oppression to them. So they were so enthralled by my existence. Not my story, my existence. It was like, wow, your skin feels so great. And I'm like, damn. It's one of those things where it's I look, how I'm not a scientist. My public school in Gary, Indiana was pretty whack. I didn't have a real science class. So I don't even know if what I'm about to talk about is even science related. But you know how when you see something, because you're living through the world with your senses, you can kind of figure out what it might feel like or taste like or whatever. So that's why I didn't understand why people would want to touch my hair, because just because I don't touch your hair, I can kind of have a sense as to what it feels like, I guess. So the fact that people didn't have that reasoning, or that white people don't have that reasoning, it shocked me a lot. So instead of meeting girls with dreams, which I'm sure they existed, but they just didn't exist around me. Because I wrote a quote that I wanted to make sure Some people find salvation and freedom exploring the oppression of others, and I do quite the opposite, and I am in awe of white people problems. I'm like, oh my God, what would they do if they were actually oppressed? And I think like, man, they'd probably kill themselves. And I had a friend in acting school, Amanda Greer, she was my roommate, and the first day we met, she's a girl from Corpus Christi, Texas, and she was like, yeah, I got a Confederate flag in my basement. I said, don't tell nobody else that. And then I remember that same year is when Obama won the first election. She's like, I don't get it, it's not a big deal. I said, okay, sit down, we have to talk. And then I remember that night telling her the story about Emmett Till and how she had never knew that story ever existed, or that there were other stories like that. And I, for once, was like, oh, I grew up learning all of this because my environment fostered that education, and there are a whole bunch of people who didn't have insight into basic American history because nobody gave a shit to teach them about it. So when I think about Little Women, I think about I was 9, and I was a little kid, and I was reading what I thought was a normal story because I grew up with a very normal childhood. I never had to explain myself. I never had to teach anybody about myself. It was just regular life. Like college, I never had to, there was no black student union because the whole college was black. So we were all going for the Student Government Association. We were all going for Roy Court. We were all doing these different things. And since I went away to school in Memphis, that was my first time being around a whole bunch of different types of black people. And we were all different. And knowing that like some down south talk different or dress different than us up north, they thought we were proper, which is crazy. So yeah, so I think about how I was 9 reading this book, and then it wasn't until I got older, because I haven't read it in a while, and I was like, damn, a story about little black women doesn't exist because when this book was written, they were slaves. And no, it's funny, you can laugh, because they were slaves, and not only that, but they were not allowed to read. So it's like our stories that we want to tell now, it's not a surprise that they're facing opposition, that people may not want to see them, because it's been a history of our stories just never being told, which is why right now where I am in my career as a writer and a comedian, I'm just really trying to focus on telling my stories, never mind who the audience is, and not try to paint a picture for a certain type of audience to get it. The people who get it will get it. And yeah, I think that's it. Let me see if I missed anything. I feel like I'm way under time. No, I'm not. I got time to riff. Oh, okay, well, I could talk about this. Me and my boyfriend play a game where you know how sometimes you're watching Netflix and it takes longer to find something to watch than so like you made the popcorn, but you eat the popcorn looking for something to watch? We play this game where we just shift through all of the, the pictures of the cast and everything, and we point out like, oh, that could have been a black person. That could have been a black person. Like, that's a game we play. And we'll watch a show, and we'll be like, that could have been a black person. That could have been a black person. And if you notice, if you watch TV, most black characters are just in support of the white characters and their stories and their narrative. And it just always brings it back to Little Women. I'll never, ever, ever forget this book. I like it. I really do think it's a good book. It's a good story. It's all right. But it really propels me forward in making sure that when my daughter is 30, she'll have I'm not going to write a novel, I don't think, but there are artists out here who are making things for people that look like them, and that's not necessarily the focus. They're just allowed to now make that art. So support us. That's it.